You've written all these books about these colorful teams. Where does Cedric Ceballos rank in the pantheon of just sports knuckleheads?
I mean, he did nickname himself Chice for franchise, which is, considering he was playing for the Lakers, which is the franchise of Kareem and Magic and Kobe and Shaq and Gail Goodrich and Jerry West and Elgin Baylor and Kareem. I would say it's a little. He's not Dennis Rodman. He's not, clinically sort of diagnosable. But I would say, in the arrogant standpoint, it's hard to get past nicknaming yourself Chice.
Yeah,
but it's a good nickname. It is a good nickname, though. Chice is kind of cool. It just makes no sense.
It's a curse. We saw how Steve Francis worked out. Don't take that nickname, Steve. We saw how it went.
Yeah, good point.
And you did a book about the Lakers, and I actually gained so much respect for you. Like, the anecdote about showing up at J.R. Ryder's house, that's J.R. Ryder. Is there anyone who you wouldn't drop in on?
I've knocked on a lot of doors in my career, and I only wimped out once, and it was a murderer's house, and it was in Gary, Indiana, and I was there by myself, and I was a young journalist, and I was outside there. My daughter had just recently been born, and I was thinking, I don't know, this guy killed someone. I don't know. And I did not knock on his door. And I will tell you, I've regretted it ever since. It's the only time I ever wimped out knocking on a door.
Yeah, and well, J.R. Ryder, if it's any consolation, I'm sure he has killed a man. So, and he's
definitely threatened to kill some journalists. So,
Yeah. Hopefully not you. And
not yet, at least.
And yeah, the J.R. Ryder flat tire story can you tell us a little bit about that? I really enjoyed that.
Well, what's funny? You probably know this from comedy. A lot of times, the quick stories are the funniest. Instead of going to this long and then. I love it. He basically, J.R. Ryder missed 3 straight practices because his car broke down, but he lived 300 yards from the practice facility. So it's duh. You don't need anything else. It's just that ridiculously good. And the other one is he missed a shoot around because he overslept it. They were on the road, and he had the front desk clerk at the hotel write a note to Phil Jackson saying, "Dear Coach, my name is Tim. I'm the front desk clerk at the Hyatt. It's my fault that I forgot to give J.R. Ryder a wake-up call, and that is why he is late." J.R. Ryder literally hands this note to Phil Jackson. That's great.
Yeah, I just appreciate anything to put Phil Jackson off his game a little bit. Reading your book, it really made me appreciate the Del Harris era. And do you feel a little bit responsible for him getting honored during Game 2 of the finals?
I love Del Harris. Was Del Harris honored during Game 2?
Yeah. They put him on the screen. He received an award. He even got a little bit of an opportunity to speak. It was seeing that in context of reading your book, I was really a heartwarming moment for me.
I will tell you, Del Harris, he was a really nice guy. We are nothing alike even remotely. He's very conservative, very Christian, probably voted for Trump, blah, 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 all these things, right? I did not. He's a very nice guy. And he was genuinely hurt because he was not invited to Kobe's final game. And most of the Lakers from his career were.
Wow.
And I do feel like he really helped Kobe's development as a young player. So I'm glad to actually hear that he had a moment, because he's a really nice human being.
Jeff, why do you think he didn't get invited?
Because I honestly think they just overlooked him. It'd been a long time. Everyone talks about Phil Jackson, and that stuff. I just think he was kind of forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. There's a lot of oversight. And is it hard for you to watch a Lakers title run when you've written books about basically the most relevant Lakers teams? Are you just passively working on the book as you watch this AD Kobe run, LeBron run?
I've watched, I would say, 2 minutes total of the finals. Maybe.
Big Dragic guy, huh?
This season just hasn't I feel like, the ratings are pretty far down. I feel like for a lot of people, it just doesn't feel real. And that's kind of it for me. I'm not saying it isn't real. I'm not saying they don't deserve the credit. It just hasn't grabbed me. It just hasn't,
Cool. I understand that. And, I'm just quarantined and I'm going to grad school. So that's my, how I celebrate my life, how I have a good time.
Well, Jeff, when we're able to get people back in the stands, do you think there would be a big resurgence of people going? Because a lot of times, in the middle of the season and your team is bad, a lot of people don't go. Do you think people just because of COVID, people just I need to go out and go to a game?
I think if people feel like it's safe, it'll be that way.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be, but I really like, my kid and I have a 14-year-old son named Emmett, and we go to a lot of college basketball games out here in Southern California, and a lot of Angels games, which, you can get a ticket for $4. So it's
great.
And I really do miss like being at a game, not even the action, not seeing Mike Trout or LeBron or whoever. I just miss the ambiance of a game, the sounds of a game, the smells of a game, a hot dog and a soda. Like I really miss that.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like a lot of people, more than just being at a game, they miss the experience of the game itself, the ambiance of the game.
Yeah, and the Angels do have that great ambiance. All their ushers look like, old-timey carnival workers. They play that train song at the start of the game, calling all
nice
Angels.
Job.
Well, I went to Southern California for undergrad, and the Tigers were great then, so I would wear an Angels shirt, and I would rip it off to reveal the Tigers shirt underneath. People hated it.
Wait, I love how you just mentioned, my son is always like, when are they going to do a new song? They've done the intro to the Angels. They do the same Calling All Angels by Train.
Yeah.
Highlights from Nolan Ryan from 30 years ago.
Yeah, they really pushed Garrett Anderson during that track. It's wild.
Yeah, Garrett Anderson. A lot of Tim Salmon, a couple of Darren Erstats. Yeah.
Yeah, then you're still wondering how to pronounce Tim Salmon. No one will ever know. So you've written books on a lot of great teams. Early 90s Cowboys, awesome book. The Showtime Lakers, the 2000s Lakers, the 86 Mets. So you write about a certain type of team figure. Like, is there a bad team you'd love to write a book on?
Oh, yeah. I love, like that Tiger team that lost was 119 games.
Yeah.
I was a baseball writer at Sports Illustrated when that was going on. So if you said to me, someone was like, we will give you a good amount of money to write about that Tiger season with like Delman Young and Bobby Higginson and like, wasn't it Delman Young?
Yeah, it was Delman. It was Dimitri, actually.
Dimitri Young.
Yeah, we had Delman a few years later. Any Young comes to the Tigers in the 2000s.
I love Dimitri Young. He was awesome. Like really nice guy. And that team was so miserable. Wait, they had a 20-game loser. Didn't they have a 20-game loser on that team or a 19-game loser?
Yeah.
I don't remember anymore. But they were so bad. If you paid me, if you said we wanted you to do a book about the shitball Tigers of whatever year that was, I'd be in 100 times over.
Yeah, I mean, the bad things are more interesting, and I do, just for the conversation, is there a recent team that's been good that you think would be, they'd be a good book for me?
Well, I think the LeBron Heat would be a great book.
Yeah.
I really do. I think there are a lot of great, because I'm all about the side characters, right? So like Birdman was on that team. Birdman's a great character. Ray Allen leaving Boston and going to Miami and Kevin Garnett getting really mad at him is great. Pat Riley kind of in putting it together, great. So I think the Heat, somewhere along the line, someone's going to do a great Heat book. Maybe it'll be.
Yeah, I mean, Ian Thompson kind of got there with the soul of basketball, but if you took your writing sensibilities with that story, like, you can have $25 from me right now.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Just send me the $25 and maybe I'll write that.
I mean, we normally give our guests $25, so I'll send you $25. No problem.
Great.
So your books are laugh out loud funny. Are there any jokes you couldn't get in that you really enjoyed?
Oh man, through the years there have been. I mean, I don't know. It depends. Like the older I get and the more established I am, the more side references I can make, which is always a joy. Like my thing is this. All right, this is gonna sound weird, but I think you'll get it. Maybe. When I was a kid, my dad and I went to Washington D.C. I'm from New York, to visit my grandma who was in the hospital. We took a walk one day, and it was election season. My dad thought it would be funny to take an election sign in Washington, like a local congressional sign, take it, bring it home, and put it up in our neighborhood in New York, right? Nobody gets a joke except the two of us. Nobody else would get it. But there's something kind of cool about having a reference. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense at all, or is that dumb?
Absolutely. And I read your blog. You have all the Easter eggs in your books. Like, you always work in like a reference to your wife. It's beautiful. There's a certain number I think you always do.
Yeah, her birthday. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So I love those. I love those. Like, there's a reference in this book I did. My dad's name, his business name, long story, was Stanley Hers. His real name is Stanley Pearlman. He's Stanley Hers. And he was an executive search guy. So I was talking about Shaq, how nobody's worth 120 million. And I said, not Bill Clinton, not Pamela Anderson, not Stanley Hers, America's finest executive search recruiter. I'm like, nobody's going to know what that means. But it's not enough of a sticking point that someone would stop and be like, oh, this ruins the book. I don't know what he's talking about. You just kind of read past it. And I love when I sent it to my dad and I was like, Dad, go to page 54 or whatever it was.
That's great.
That's all. Is that the first time you've given your dad a shout out, or?
No, there have been many.
Awesome. So you wrote about AC Green. You wrote about Mark Madsen. Who was the more impressive virgin?
I mean, I was a virgin until I was about 20. So my run was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I might have to write a book about you and put it alongside.
Hey, I'm good about that. But nobody, the thing about AC Green, the thing I didn't have that AC Green did have is he gets to the Lakers. Everyone knows he's a virgin because he's made a big deal about his Christianity and his virginity at Oregon State. So he shows up and all the Lakers are trying to get him laid. And they start taking bets and they're passing around a hat. How long is it going to take for AC Green to have sex? And so I would say Mark Madsen did not have that. Shaq was really nice and good to him. So no, Mark Madsen didn't have that. So I would say as far as impressive virgins go, as far as resiliency, AC Green did not give in until he got married. And the sad thing is, and I don't know the story behind it, AC Green got married at like 35 years old.
Ooh.
So I'm assuming he did not have sex until 35, 36. And then he got divorced not that long after. So I could see AC Green being like, wasn't that good. I'm getting divorced. They're like, that's what I waited for all those years.
Yeah, they should have had his virginity in the stat line every time. They should have had that.
That is a good idea.
It's still maintained. So I grew up, every Thursday was Sports Illustrated Day. And then I read a lot of Page Two. And like, now that we have a little distance, like, where does Page Two compare to like Sports Illustrated in terms of prestige for a writing career?
You're talking about Page Two at ESPN?
Yeah.
It's so prestigious. I had to think, what the hell is Page Two? Even though I did write for it for like a year and a half.
Come on, you were up there with Bill Simmons, Hunter Thompson,
Jamel was writing for it.
Yeah,
Jamel was writing Page Two. Yeah, there were a lot of good writers. But SI to me was always the dream. I'm 48 years old, so I grew up reading SI. Told my mom when I was a kid, I'm going to write for Sports Illustrated one day. Like, it was the dream of dreams. ESPN was a cool gig and it was good exposure, but it was just a gig. But SI for me, it was like joining the dream team. I would say I was like Leitner on the dream team when I got to SI.
Jeff, do you still remember your first day at SI?
Yeah, because I showed up wearing a suit. And it was ridiculous. There's no way they were wearing a suit.
I didn't get a job at Bleacher Report last year because I showed up to the final interview in a suit and they were like, "What's wrong with you?"
Never show up in a suit. Although I'm skeptical, that's probably not the reason. I mean, they just laid off like 90% of their staff, so maybe you didn't get the job.
That's very kind of you. So you're talking about Sports Illustrated, and you wrote some huge pieces for them, especially the John Rocker profile. What was it like seeing your writing recounted on an episode of Survivor?
Oh my God, he's such a dick. That's the thing. Like, he's such a dick. He What was weird was watching Survivor, and I did watch because he was on it. I wasn't a Survivor watcher, but first of all, he always lies about what happened, like always, without fail. He just lies and lies and lies. And the funny thing is, it was all on tape. And for years, I didn't have the tape of it. Like, I actually taped the interview, gave it to a fact checker named Victor Nunez at Sports Illustrated. Victor used the tape to check the story, and I never saw the tapes again. And all the years, John Rocker is saying, "Oh, this guy, he's just a liberal Jew with an agenda, and this guy, he was just this and that, and he lied and blah." Truly. And about 4 years ago, Victor Nunez DMs me, and he's like, "Hey, I was cleaning out my stuff, and I found the tapes. Do you want the tapes?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah, I want the tapes." And he sent me the tapes, and I listened to it on my little recorder. And of course, everything was right there. And I did a podcast episode where I talked about it and used some of the recordings. But
cool.
The thing about Rocker is he never has really had any credibility. It's not like people are like, I really believe the story. But then I heard that John Rocker is selling Speak English t-shirts out of his car. And I thought that guy really has a lot of credibility. So.
And I'm sure that you probably had like better hopes walking into that interview. Was there a moment in that interview where you're like, "Oh, I'm just destroying this guy"?
No, because if you read the article, I really mean this. If you go back and read the article, I didn't destroy him. It was actually it was not a column.
Yeah,
at all. There was no editorializing in that piece at all. It was me driving around with him. I will say, the moment when there was a moment when I realized, like, this is going to sound weird. There's a moment when I realized this was just a really kind of bad guy. And there's so many moments throughout the day, right? But there's one when I was like, this guy's just something wrong with him. We were walking down a sidewalk. We were getting lunch. And he had a pen in his hand, right? This is going to sound really small. And you'll be like, really? That's the thing? We're walking and he has a pen in his hand. And I was walking a little behind him. And he dropped the pen. And I picked up the pen and I said, "Hey, you dropped your pen." And he goes, "No, man, I meant to do that." Like,
what?
Right? You get that, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have a pen in your hand. we're at a strip mall, so there are probably garbage cans every 50 yards at max. And you just decide something in your head, the circuits go, I have this pen in my hand, I don't need this pen, therefore I will drop it on the ground. How is that even possible? So,
Yeah,
Wow.
it's littering. It's a waste of resources. John Rocker, not a good guy.
Yep.
So I've read a lot of your books. Football for a Buck. It was awesome. Did you mean to make me think Steve Young was the greatest quarterback who ever lived?
no, he wasn't even the greatest USFL quarterback, but he was he's one of my favorite people to deal with. He's just the best. He's a great storyteller, like a great storyteller. Did you know he almost got the role of, he was offered the role that Brett Favre had in There's Something About Mary?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
did he like object to the content or something like that?
Did not object. See, he's not like that. What he is Mormon though, and he loved the script, but he sort of said to the producers, he's like, I just think this would not play well in the Mormon community, and it's not really worth it for me.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's a really decent guy. The funny thing is, the best thing about that is my favorite quote in the history of maybe my reporting is when Brett Favre did There's Something About Mary, and he was so wooden in it,
Yeah.
it was not good.
Yeah.
And he's in the next whatever training camp. He's with the Packers and he's in the locker room, and a teammate comes up to him and says, "Man, Brett, you were really wooden in There's Something About Mary." And Favre's reply is, "How many movies have you sucked in?"
That is amazing.
And if you, reading your Favre book, like that made me realize how lucky Brett Favre was to be there, because his dad was his high school coach, wouldn't let him throw the ball at all during high school. So that was just a good detail there. I don't have a question, but
it doesn't say much about. It's funny how everyone's like, his dad was a great coach. You literally had a son with a nuclear arm a nuclear weapon for an arm, and you threw 6 times a game. Like, I don't know if I'd say great coach.
No way.
Like imagine having Brett Favre as your quarterback, and you're like, we have a 5'6" running back. We really need to get that guy the ball.
Yeah, I think you even wrote about he only had like one game where he was allowed to throw the ball in high school.
Yeah, I think he averaged about 5 passes a game. And like, it was a different period. Obviously, it was a different time period. We didn't throw as much. Still.
So, yeah, at least you passed, I don't know, like 15, just to see what you do, but hey.
Also, he's your kid.
Right.
Like, you want him to get a scholarship, and he's gifted. So,
yeah.
Yeah, too close to home. That Nick Van Exel saying Cancun on 3, have you come across anything where a joke has done more damage to an athlete's career?
That's a great question.
I mean, I'm a comic. I get in trouble for jokes all the time, and that seems like it's the most repercussions for a joke I've ever seen.
I guess it wasn't a joke. I was going to say Brett Favre sending a picture of his penis to Jen Sturger, not the best. Like, that did not end well.
Man.
But that probably wasn't a joke. I think he actually thought, this is a crazy thing. I know this is off subject. Imagine being a guy and thinking, how I'm really going to get this woman to sleep with me? You know how I'm really going to impress her? I'm going to send her a picture of my penis. That's just going to win her over.
Yeah, you know what women love? Visual aids.
Yeah, exactly. She really wants to see my hairy balls. Like, that will win her over. I can't. This will be great.
And I love Three Rings. The craziest thing was how did Olden Polynice end up in that book?
Because he was at the fight between Shaq and Kobe. He was playing pickup, and he just happened to be there. And I read somewhere he was there, and I reached out to him, and he lives in LA. And I just drove up and hung out with him at Starbucks. Great guy.
Cool.
Great name.
Yeah, one of the best
name.
I have the fantasy basketball name Olden Poly with my niece, because you got to have a bad name in your basketball. If you see him again, let him know.
That's awesome. I would tell her.
Yeah, how many fights total were in this book?
Probably about 6 or 7.
Yeah, there were.
Actually, maybe 10. Not all Shaq and Kobe, though. Like, there was Rick Fox, Doug Christie.
Yeah, Rick Fox came across great in his fight. Rick Fox came across better than anyone in the book, I felt, but I was really relieved to tell people that. A lot of Oz fans in my life. And I was really glad you went so deep involved with the refereeing in Kings-Lakers 2002.
Yeah.
Did the players in that game kind of think it was fixed?
I don't think they did at the time. I think they just thought this is really fucked up. Like, I think they think this was really awful officiating. I don't think most players, when they're playing basketball, think these refs are paid off until it comes up later. I don't think at the time they do that.
Maybe if you'd watched this year's like playoffs, you would see they all think they're complaining so much.
I had someone say to me just today on a podcast, do I think the NBA gave Miami game 3? And I was like,
Ooh.
I didn't watch, so I don't know, but it seems unlikely.
Yeah, no way. Did you consider interviewing any of the referees in that game?
I tried reaching out to him, I couldn't get him, so I did try.
Cool. Yeah. It might be Kobe getting this upset over a $100 debt, but what's the craziest gambling story you've come across in your research?
With the Lakers or everything?
I'll take both answers actually, if you got them.
Well, I mean, this one, it would be Kobe getting in a fight with Samaki Walker because he didn't pay off $100. So that has to be number one. I wrote a book about the '86 Mets, and Lenny Dykstra gambled like nobody's business. And what was the one? There was one, he was in Montreal, and he just lost so much money. And I don't remember the specifics, but it might have involved him naked at some point. Something like that. He was, back then, they had a lot of really bad gamblers on the '86 Mets, and they were gambling all the time, nonstop, large amounts of money. But I don't remember specifics. It's been a long time.
Okay, so the '86 Mets were wild as hell. Which Met was the most fun to interview?
My favorite guy on that team was probably Kevin Mitchell, who used to be a gangbanger in San Diego and has a bullet lodged in his back. And first of all, he's a really nice guy. He actually is a really nice guy. And the Mets really did him wrong. Like, they basically, Strawberry and Gooden were both using cocaine. Kevin Mitchell was not. They assumed that the third young African-American star was the troublemaker because he was from San Diego and a gangbanger. And instead of getting rid of Gooden or Strawberry, they actually trade Kevin Mitchell. And it was really not cool. That guy's great. And, went on to be an MVP with the Giants. So.
Yeah, I'm reading that book now. It's great. I just couldn't get enough after Three Ring Circus. So I went into that. And I appreciate you taking the time with us. Again, I love your writing. If any sports fans are out here, read your work. Do you have anything coming up the pipeline after this, or just chilling and doing the PR tour for it?
I think I'm going to do a book about the Moses Malone's year with the Atlanta Hawks. What do you think?
Hey,
I will display it prominently. I promise you that.
That'd be amazing. I'm actually doing my next book is a Bo Jackson biography.
Oh, wow. Sign me. Yeah, I'll just Vend me another $25.
That's bad. You can pay me now.
Okay, done. All right, Jeff Pearlman, thank you for coming on The Walk On. I appreciate you doing that, and I appreciate your work. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was very fun.
All right.
All right, guys. Take care.
Later.